And we're live.
Nice.
We're live. We're back to episode 10 of Enlighten the Youth. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. This is our very first podcast guest making a return, Nolan Kunetzki, after his 4 or 5, 6 month hiatus
5 months.
High level to work a bit on. Or actually, I'll let you explain it. So,
Yeah.
Reintroduction to Nolan. He's going to just explain what he's been up to and who he is.
Yeah, sounds good. First of all, excited to be back on the podcast, part 2 of the Firefighter Diaries.
Yeah.
So that's super exciting, man. Thanks for having me back on.
Of course.
I love the studio setup, by the way. This feels so formal. It's awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
Long time in the building, but we've got this now, which is super sick.
Yeah, dude, it's sick. I love it. I spent the last 5 months up in high-level Alberta fighting forest fires. So, wildland firefighter. Started at the end of April, showed up, and then just finished about a week ago. So I got back late September. So did 5 months out there, and it was an awesome experience. So, I could talk a little bit about more.
Yeah, for sure.
What I did up there.
Yeah,
so.
Go ahead and just expand on your experience over your time out in high level.
Yeah, so I was on a 4-person heli-tac crew, and essentially what my job was to respond to new wildfire starts in the high-level district. So when a new wildfire starts, it can be detected a number of different ways. We have lookout towers, where it's the person's job to sit in the tower all summer and just look out for smokes, pretty much. So they see a smoke, they call into dispatch, and then they send us. The public also has the ability to phone 310 Fire, which will go to a call center, I believe, in Edmonton, and then they let our dispatch center know, and then we can respond to the detection that way. So the way I explain it to people pretty much is like the heli-tac crews, which is what I was on, is the 911 for wildfire, pretty much. Like we're the first responders to new wildfire detections. I think there were 8 heli-tac crews up in high level this summer. I could be mistaken. I know some of them are gonna probably watch this, so they can correct me after. But
how many people were on each crew?
Yeah, so we had 2 different types of heli-tac crews. We had the 4-person crews, which was what I was, and we fly in a bit of a smaller helicopter. And then there's also 8-person crews as well, and they fly in a little bit of a bigger helicopter, so they can carry a little bit more gear than we do. It wouldn't really change, like they wouldn't dispatch one over the other depending on the fire. However, the 8-person crews did a lot more like sustained action stuff, which is kind of like staying out on the fires, working hot spots, and working to get larger fires contained. Whereas the 4-person crews and the 8-person crews sometimes will just fly out to a new detection, get it contained, and then if it requires more resources after that, then they can call in additional crews to work on those types of fires. So yeah, essentially we're the 911 of wildfire. There is a second type of wildland firefighter that works in Alberta, and they work on what's called a unit crew, and they do fully sustained action stuff. So they're a 20-man crew, and they will come out to large fires, and they will work out there for like weeks at a time to contain these like large wildfires. So like sometimes we would go out to a fire, and it would be really small, and we'd have it out in a day. Or if it was a little bit bigger, sometimes we can call in the unit crew, or like one of the 8-man heli-tac crews to come and work on that fire for a more prolonged period of time. Yeah. So.
How long were you out there for exactly?
Like from when I showed up?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I got there on April 28th, and then I left on September 24th. So like almost exactly 5 months.
And what percentage of that time do you think that you were actually fighting fires?
Yeah, so I would probably say about half the time, maybe just under half the time. So like if you listen to my earlier podcast, like when Roman asked me like when he asked me what my expectations were, it was like, I'm ready to go out there, get my ass kicked, be like on the fire line every day, and it didn't actually end up really being like that at all. So like if you think about like a city firefighter, how they operate is they sit at the station and watch movies and just hang out with the boys and cook food, and then when that bell rings, they're going to the fire. So it was very similar for us as a heli-tac crew. We would be stationed at one of the wildfire bases in the high level district. We had 3. We had one in Fort Vermilion, one just north of high level at the airport called Footner Lake. That was our main base. And then Steen River as well, which was kind of towards the territory's border. And we would spend a lot of the days just watching movies or playing video games and stuff like that. And when it was a little bit busier, we'd be waiting at the helicopter. We have getaway times, so like the time from the dispatch to get in the air on the way to the fire. So days that were higher hazard, like more dry temperatures, hot, like it's very hot outside, we would be like more ready to go. But there are like a lot of days where you're kind of just chilling. You don't get a dispatch. You just spent the day chilling. But when you do get that phone call, it's always hilarious because like we'll have a movie going or something, and the phone will ring, and everybody's like on their feet, like running to get their boots on, like to get to the helicopter. And yeah, it's a pretty awesome feeling because we did do a lot of chilling, and that's kind of just the nature of helitack. But when it's time to go, when it's time to do the work, like the boys are dialed, and like everybody's on their feet and running to the helicopter, and you're like calling the pilot, getting the pilot ready to go, and yeah, you load the helicopter and you're ripping to the fire, and you're just like, hell yeah, it's just such a sick feeling.
What was that adrenaline like?
Yeah, like the phone goes off. Like, man, when I was brand new, we had a very slow June. Like they called it monsoon June because it just rained for a lot of June. So you're kind of like a little nervous that the season wasn't going to be like busy for us, right?
You guys are the only people that are hoping
exactly. Like good for the province, obviously, if we have a slow season, but like it's kind of sucks for us because we don't get any action. So we were a little nervous, but like. Yeah, like the very first time that phone rang and we were like on that 10-minute getaway, like 10 minutes to be in the helicopter on the way, like my heart was pumping so fast. And yeah, it's a crazy adrenaline rush. And even like towards the end of the season too, when you kind of get used to it, it's still like phone rings, fuck yeah, like time to go to work. And so I think that's definitely one of the appealing parts about the job for a lot of people is like it's sick, man. Like from the moment that phone rings, the adrenaline's pumping. You fly to the fire. You're in the helicopter, looking out at the smoke, at the wildfire that you see, and you got your crew leader in the front seat, like, yeah, dispatch, we have a confirmed wildfire, and you're just like, let's do it. Yeah, and then we'll land in, and it's like just constant adrenaline flowing the whole time. You land in, you unload the basket, you're crouching in front of the helicopter. Get the bucket hooked up on the helicopter, they take off, you start hiking in the gear, trying to come up with a plan about like how you're going to tackle this wildfire. Like it just requires so much teamwork and so much like problem solving and just like a lot of knowledge and training to be able to like get out there and effectively handle those wildfires. So it's just an awesome thing to do. Like it was a really cool job.
Now that you've had the experience on site, what would you say is what would you say the most different thing from your expectations was? Like your expectations versus reality. What was the biggest difference?
There was quite a few things that like I had done a lot of research. So like I talked about our training. Like the training was pretty accurate. You learn about the fire science and stuff and how to keep yourself safe out there and how to fight fire. So like I was pretty bang on about that. But yeah, like I said earlier, like I definitely thought we'd be sleeping out in tents every night, putting in 16-hour days. And like some days we did put in like, long shifts, but a lot of the time it was just like you'd just be chilling all day, or it was like, you do an 8-hour shift, go out to a fire, work the fire, and then come home. So like we weren't sleeping in tents or doing anything like that. We did do one 26-hour shift. That was pretty awesome.
26 hours straight.
Yeah, 26 hours straight.
Like,
yeah, so this was like, I can tell you the story about it. It was a pretty cool fire. So just go off on a little tangent here, but we had gone to one fire at this point that was like a flare stack that was kind of like overflowing, lighting some grass on fire. Can
you explain what that means?
Yeah, a flare stack basically, like, I don't know like a whole lot about how it works exactly, but it just burns off like toxic gas, like byproducts of like oil and gas. So it's just a constant flame that's lit, but something was wrong with it, and it was just like spewing gas over the edge, and it was landing in the grass and catching the grass on fire. So it was very like, it was not a typical initial attack fire. I'll refer to it as like an IA fire, initial attack.
These are like in superhero movies, like they have the different types of supervillains with different powers. It just sounds like this is like the boss of the supervillains.
What is that? The flare stack?
Yeah, like this
Yeah.
is like the. How many people did you get out on that fire?
So that one was a very straightforward like fire. Like it was obviously weird because we were dealing with like oil and gas stuff and infrastructure, and as wildland firefighters, we're not allowed to like spray the actual like we're not allowed to fight structure fires under any circumstances. We're not allowed to like touch that, but our job was to like prevent it from getting into the forest surrounding it, right? Because this was a flare stack in the middle of nowhere, in the high level area, right? So, anyways, we landed on it and we got it out. We just used like those. We have these things called we call them piss packs, and like if you ever had like one of those water guns as a kid, you stick it in the water and you pull the water up, and then you spray your friends with it. It was basically like that, but you just have a big backpack, a big bladder with water, you just fill it up from wherever water source, and then it's just like a trombone, and you just spray the water out. So we were able to get all like the little hot spots. It didn't burn into the ground, but the first real fire that we had was after this flare stack fire, and we were on a 5-minute day, so the indices were very high, like very hot weather, very low humidity, like the forest was primed to burn, like it was good conditions for a ripping wildfire. And so we were on 5 minutes chilling right next to the helicopter, and we get the call, load up in the helicopter, and we show up there, and it's massive. It is a massive fire, like completely way bigger than the first fire that we went to. And me and Eric, the other guy on my crew, this was like the first time we'd ever seen anything like this. So when we respond to a wildfire, we circle it in the helicopter, come up with a game plan, and then land on it. But this fire was burning like too intense for us to like get on and start setting up like a pump and a hose to put the fire out. So they called in tankers like to drop retardant on the fire. So there are like 3 tankers on this fire. You have the bird dog, which is just a smaller plane, and they're in charge of like circling the fire, telling the tankers where to drop. And then my crew leader Cole, he was the incident commander of that fire. That's what they call it, the IC. And so he's like working with the bird dog in the air, like trying to coordinate where they're gonna drop the retardant to try and box this fire in to prevent it from growing. So you attack the head, right, where it's most intense, where the wind is blowing. So they were dropping retardant, and it was just an unreal like thing to witness, you know, like you just circled this massive wildfire. You're on the ground now, and there were bison. There's a big herd of bison, and they were like running away from the fire.
Because you're out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, you're out in the middle of nowhere. This was in a bit of like an oil and gas area, so there was like there were values at stake on this fire, right? Because obviously you want to try and prevent it from burning over infrastructure, right? So yeah, like we're just standing there, just like in the sky, taking tons of videos because it's just so cool. And like there's just like tankers dropping, and we've got additional crews on the way. Like right away we knew that we would need like more help, and eventually they were able to kind of get the fire under control enough on like the head and the flanks that it was safe for firefighters to move in to start attacking it from the heel, and you try and just wrap it, right? So we started working on the fire, just helping out where we could, and like we had some 8-man crews get there that set up their pump and hose, so we were kind of just working with them. We had guys working the chainsaw, cutting line, like you clear the brush so you can have a good hose lay. And so we just started working on the fire like that, and we ended up staying out there all night. Damn. Yeah, in the pitch black.
Did you get any breaks or?
Yeah, like
is it just like you cycle through once someone gets tired, then you?
Yeah, like we were kind of just helping out where we can. Like we were 4 guys on a just absolutely massive fire. Like there's no chance that we would have had that thing like under control that night. And so like they also called in a dozer group. So one of the techniques that we use for firefighting as well is you call in heavy equipment, and it's basically just like 2 or 3 bulldozers, and they just start wrapping the fire. So I'll show you what I mean by this, and we'll get it put up on the on the screen for the folks to see. Yeah. But this was a different fire that we responded to, and basically we called in the dozers, and they just create a fire break. So it prevents the fire from continuing to travel through the fuels, and they push the trees down right to the soil. Yeah. So anything burning goes into the middle, anything not burning goes obviously outside the guard, and the objective is that you prevent the fire from spreading any further.
So they basically dig a path removing all the trees
Yeah.
that could burn so the fire can't spread.
Yes, exactly.
But doesn't, or is it only certain fires that burn underground as well?
Yeah, so these fires burn underground, but usually when a fire gets like deep underground, it's been burning for a while, right?
Okay.
So that's these like large fires that
Yeah.
you can't put out right away. And then a lot of people also like assume that fires are like burning up into the trees, but it takes certain conditions for the fire to get up in the trees. You need like ladder fuels, so it starts on the ground and then climbs up like dead branches and then gets into the tops of the trees. So that isn't always the case. This was like a very like ground/surface level fire. Even this one, like back to Fire 30, this big 26-hour one that we were talking about, we had dozers come around, and so that night that was actually it was the summer solstice, so it was the longest day of the year.
What
So we wanted to call it the solstice fire. They ended up coming up with a different name for it. It was, I think they called it the Amber Creek fire, but we thought the solstice fire would be like a super sick name because it was like a once in a lifetime fire, man, like a 26-hour shift on the longest day of the year. And so what we just ended up doing was working on these dozer guards and starting to extinguish the fire like just 5 feet from the dozer guard. So you make sure it's not going to jump that guard and get into the unburnt fuels and then keep going, right? Because you do all this work. You can spend days trying to contain a fire and wrap a fire, but if it jumps that guard, then you're back to square one, right? You're kind of screwed. Now you've got a whole nother problem to deal with. So that night we just basically just picked hot spots, reinforced the dozer guard, and just worked with the pump and hose and kind of just took our time, took breaks when we needed to, and slept in the truck. Like I got like an hour of sleep in the truck just while we were driving around, just kind of checking things out. So, but yeah, that was an unreal experience. And we actually ended up going out to that fire the next day and doing another night shift. As well,
so
which is pretty cool.
That's separate from the 26-hour shift.
That was the 26-hour shift.
Okay, that's part of it.
That's part of it,
Okay,
right? So just working off that dozer guard, and that was a very very long day. We ended up flying back one of our crewmates just to go pick us up like some food because you bring your lunch, right? But 26 hours, like you gotta eat. So he went and got us like supper. That was a blessing, and then another crew came in the morning to start working on that fire, and they brought us some breakfast, and that was pretty cool. So then after that fire, we ended up going back on initial attack, right? Like I said before, heli tack, you do what you can in those like first few hours or whatever. In this case, we stayed a little bit longer, and then you pass it over to like unit crews. So that fire actually ended up burning for like a couple months. I think it might still be like on the map as a under control wildfire.
Damn.
Just because it like burns in the ground, right? So many like little hot spots and stuff that you can't always see. But yeah, they ended up calling in unit crews, like the 20-man crews from, I think they had like Grand Prairie unit crew out there, White Court unit crew. So it was a pretty significant fire. I think that one got up to, definitely wasn't the biggest one in the district, but it got up to 3,000 hectares, which is a decently large fire, especially for the area that was in with those values at risk. Like that's a pretty large fire. So yeah, that one was really cool.
Now from all of these, or I guess just a job in general, what are your biggest takeaways that you've picked up on, skills that you've learned, or I'll let you.
Yeah, I think it's it definitely given me like a new ability to. So one of the things that we talked about in the last podcast was that like I think wildfire is going to give me an opportunity to be like in a job in a field where there's like multiple different things that you have to worry about at once, right? Like how are we going to fight this fire? How are we going to stay safe while doing it? Like, where are we going to land? So I think that was a goal that I did achieve, is like going out there and learning how to like handle a very complex situation. And I was just a crew member, right? So it wasn't like obviously you have to contribute and stuff like that. It's up to the crew leader to call the shots. I had a fantastic crew leader, by the way. He was super dialed. It was his third season only. And he was a super cool guy. We had a lot in common as well, so it ended up working out pretty well. But yeah, just being able to be in like an environment like that and being able to like identify hazards, identify risks, and just be able to come up with a plan and execute it successfully. And that's a very satisfying feeling. So that was a big takeaway, just what you can accomplish with 4 guys and the knowledge that you have, and you just put your heads together and you can accomplish a task, and it's a crazy thing. And yeah, like we did do a lot of chilling, but there were also some days where you definitely get your ass kicked as well, right? Like for example, one fire we went to, we landed in like the burn scar of a very old burn, so it's just a lot of dead trees. And the problem when a wildfire burns is that it burns out all the roots. So it makes trees very unstable. Whether like this fire just happened or whether, it's 5 years down the line and you still have some trees standing, it can be pretty unsafe, especially at a landing site, because if one of those trees comes down onto the helicopter, like that is really not is really not a good thing to happen. Yeah. So we landed on this one fire, and my job was to just take down these dead trees that were around the helicopter. And so I started working on these trees, and then like a couple of the guys hiked in towards the fire. And so I started working on these trees, and like it took me probably half an hour, 45 minutes, because you need to cut an escape route when you're cutting trees down, just because you need to be able to get out of the way, because you don't want the tree to come down on you. So, and it was all jackpotted, which means like the trees are all like stacked up on top of each other, probably like chest height. So I'm like trying to cut myself an escape route through this. It was just exhausting, and it was awesome.
Like dead trees from a fire piled up to your chest.
Yeah, in this one particular spot.
Holy
shit. So we landed in a clearing, but then around this clearing there was a bunch of trees that had fallen, stacked up, and then like I said, those trees that needed to come down that were still standing, that were a little bit unsturdy. So that was hard work, cutting those trees down. Like cutting through the jackpot was hard work, and then like you got to cut the tree down. And there were like 4 trees that I had to take down. So like by the end of it, I was pretty exhausted. And then I had to meet the guys at the fire. So I'm hiking back with a chainsaw kit, which is all our maintenance stuff, and then our combi, which is basically just like a jerry can of gas and then bar oil for the chainsaw. Yeah. And I think I might have had a Pulaski too, which is just like an axe. Yeah. But I can't remember. But it was like, it wasn't a whole lot of gear, but I was pretty pooped. Yeah. And like I start walking into this fire, and you're walking through just shit, and it's like fucking deep grass and like wet puddles and stuff, and like you're already tired, and I'm trying to like follow the map on my phone to like get to the coordinates of the fire, and like I'm stepping in shit, I'm falling, like tripping and falling, like I probably face planted 4 times on that walk. And dude, like it was hot, it was probably 30 degrees that day, and like sweat is dripping down my head. And then I was just walking kind of down like a clearing, and then I walked through the trees, so now I'm like brushing this shit, and I got the combi in my hand, and there's like spider webs all in my face. You're like trying to pull it all off, and like that was like I got there, dude, and I just like sat down and just drank water, and I was like, oh. So like that was kind of like a thing where you're just like, you really hate your life in the moment when you're hiking through it, but like you take away from it, it's like you got the task done, you did some hard ass work, you pushed through it, and the job got done, right? So just like you can be like, you got to be like mentally tough and just like keep pushing and try not to let it like get the best of you, you know what I mean? Because it was frustrating, man. Like every time I took a step and I tripped and fell with a chainsaw on my back, and like it was starting to piss me off, to be honest with you. And but yeah, you just gotta keep a positive attitude, and like and then you can work hard and really be busting your ass. Like we went to this one fire, we ended up spending 7 days on this fire because we were so strained for resources. It was a 3-hectare fire, and it was just us 4 guys, and then a couple heavy equipment operators to like bring water in, because there was no water source to pump out of, and then our helicopter pilot. So we were like an 8-person team, but like 4 firefighters, right? And just like working out there every day, and this was the hottest point of the summer, so like we're talking 35, I think it got up to like 37 degrees almost every single day on this fire, with full Nomex on, like full long sleeve, full pants, and then all your gear.
How did you guys stay hydrated during?
Just a ton of water, ton of like liquid IVs. They're not sponsored, but you get yourself some liquid IVs because they're so good.
Like you would just poke it in your arm and.
No, it's like so they call them liquid IVs, but they're electrolyte packets. There's like 500 milligrams of sodium. You just pour it in your water bottle, shake it up, and then it just like gives you electrolytes and keeps you hydrated.
Oh, that's dope.
So you just drink a ton of water, take a lot of breaks, sit in the shade. But we ended up spending 7 days on this fire, and some days while you're out there and you're just like working the nozzle and it's just hot, and you are kind of a little bit miserable, but you're miserable together, and you look back at it and you're like dude, that was a sick week, and we had like a ton of fun. So like the guys out there, they call it type 2 fun. You ever heard of that?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, so like type 1 fun is like it's fun while you're doing it, and it's fun to think about it after. Yeah. Type 2 fun is like it's not fun while you're doing it, but looking back on it, it was so fun.
I like that.
Yeah, I like it too. And I think that's like kind of like what this job is, right? Like because like Or you're balls deep in the muskeg, right, trying to set
Yeah.
up the pump, and your boots are soaked with water, and you're just like, oh my god, this is brutal.
And
And you look back, and you're just like, hell yeah, like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do you guys after those long days and you guys get to go back and all just chill together? What is that like? Do you guys just kick it like boys
Oh
or
yeah, man. Like,
just post up?
yeah, man, you get so close with the guys out there. Like I said, you get super close with your crew, but you
Yeah.
also get close with like everybody out there. You go and hang out in the gazebo after. There was like a gazebo there, so the boys would chill. But like with your crew, man, like we played a ton of card games. Like Uno
Mhm.
Flip was the game of the summer. We played a lot
Yeah.
of like Exploding Kittens, and yeah, man, like you come back after a day like that, and the supper's like nice and out, ready for you, and the boys just like eat food together, and
Yeah.
yeah, man, they like it's your brothers. You
That
become so
sounds
close with
dope,
those
man. That
guys. Yeah,
sounds really sick.
it's definitely like a lot of camaraderie, and yeah, like I miss those guys already, and
Yeah.
like lifelong connections, and like we did a lot of stuff like outside. We spent days off together too. Like we do camping trips. Me and Eric, the other rookie on my crew, we went
Yeah.
to a music festival together.
Down.
Yeah, in Calgary, and like just the guys out there are just awesome.
Yeah,
Man. Like,
you
that's one
brought
of the
some
biggest
a few
things.
of them back here too, which is sick.
Yeah,
You gotta
exactly. Well,
meet a
yeah,
few
you
of
met quite a few of them
Yeah.
as well. So yeah, just you spend every second with those guys,
Mhm.
and sometimes they get on your nerves,
They're just brothers, bro.
yeah, exactly. You love them to death,
Yeah.
and it's a super good environment for that
Mhm.
kind of thing. So
That's dope.
yeah.
Well, we're gonna take a quick intermission here, and we'll be back in a second, guys. Hello, and welcome back after that brief intermission. We're just gonna get right back into it here. Starting off with, what are some of the hazards or the risks while you're out fighting fires,
Mhm.
and at any point did you feel threatened for did your safety feel threatened
Mhm.
or?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people in the public don't really understand like what wildland firefighting is. You know what I mean? Like they know that there's people out there fighting forest fires, but they don't actually know like what that job looks like. And like there's movies like Only the Brave. Have you seen that movie?
I haven't.
Yeah, people watch like Only the Brave. So it was an incident that occurred in, I believe it was California, where a full crew of firefighters
Mhm.
was killed being burned over by like they couldn't escape the advancing flame front. So
Yeah.
and they were all killed. So a lot of people kind of see that, and as tragic as that incident is, right? Like people think that this is a very dangerous job, and it can be, but it's really not as dangerous as people think. Like people are always like, oh, like you're out there putting your life on the line, and it's like, well, like obviously the job has its risks, but so do a lot of other jobs, right? So like the issue of like the flames overtaking you, right, being burnt over. Well, that's not. I at no point this summer did I feel like I was in a position or even close to a position where like we were going to be overcome by flames. Like first of all, we have very strict training about like where we can land on the fire, how we move towards the fire. We need escape routes. We call it an anchor point, so a place that we can like come back to and get in the helicopter and leave if we have to. So like it's very, very, very safety focused, especially Alberta Wildfire as an organization. They are they're always thinking about safety, and that's one thing that I do respect a lot about that organization, and one thing that I do appreciate a lot about the culture there, is that everyone is very safety oriented. So you're not going to ever be put in a position where you feel unsafe, and if you do feel unsafe and you say something about it, no one's going to give you a hard time. With that said, there are some hazards out there. Like this summer, we had a firefighter killed. I'm sure you heard about that, by a falling tree. It was very tragic. It was on the Jasper fire. It was a firefighter from the Rocky Mountain House unit crew, I believe. Yeah, so it was very, very unfortunate. It was back in July. So trees are, in my opinion, the biggest danger that we faced as a crew out there this year.
So it's not even really the fire you have to be worried about. It's the loose trees because of the fires.
Yeah, I would say that. Like you always do have to be aware of the fire and what your fire is doing and what the weather's doing and stuff like that, because there is a chance, but it's just not I don't think the chance is as great with that as there is with trees, right? And so what happens is in Alberta, especially the high level district,
Mm-hmm.
we have a very thick layer of what's called duff, and it's a very like it's it's like a I don't even know how to describe it. I'll show you a picture, but it's like very like loose dirt, like almost
Mm-hmm.
like mossy, like spongy. I'll show you a photo here, but
Yeah.
it's called duff, and that is the reason why wildfires burn all like winter. Some wildfires burn over the winter, and people don't
Mm-hmm.
really understand that. But like, I encountered a hotspot that was literally burning 5 feet deep. Like I
Holy.
just kept putting my hose deeper and deeper and deeper, and I was like, "Holy shit! Like this is burning really deep."
Yeah.
So this
So
is
do you literally uh what's the word? Do you put out the fire from underground? Like you funnel your hose into the ground
you get it
and
deep,
you
man, and you put that fire. You're not just putting flames out. You put that fire out until you can put your hand in there and don't feel any heat.
down.
So you
Uh,
literally come in and feel the ground.
how how long does it usually take for a fire to burn that deep into the ground?
I'm honestly not sure. Like we went to a fire that had been burning for a couple months,
Yeah.
and we were just like hitting hot spots on this
Yeah.
fire, and like that one was burning deep. Like all the trees were knocked down. But like we've also gone to fires that had just started, and they were already burning maybe like a foot deep. Like um, yeah. So it burns into the duff. So this stuff on the bottom
Yeah.
is duff.
Uh-huh.
So it's got like a lot of roots in it, like a lot of organic material,
Mm-hmm.
and it just burns like a cigarette is
Mm-hmm.
the best way I could describe it. Like it's just very slow burning, but there's that constant ember, and
Mm-hmm.
it just keeps burning out this way and keeps burning deep. So that's the thing with these initial attack fires, right? Is if we miss even one spot, that ember will grow and grow and grow and grow
Mm-hmm.
and start to move, and then when the weather gets hot again, it can pop up and
Mm-hmm.
reignite. So that's why it's so important that we have to put it out completely. The stuff on the top, I think it's peat moss. I'm not actually too sure, but that's also in the ground, and that also burns very similarly. And so
Mm-hmm.
the result of the way that the ground burns is that it burns the roots on the trees, and we call it root burnout. So you can see how the roots on this tree have been fully exposed, right?
Mm-hmm.
It makes the tree very, very unsteady. Or it can do this and start burning up into the tree. So this tree
What
has
the
almost been
hell?
completely hollowed out on the base.
Yeah.
And so like you can just be walking through the woods and have a tree like this at any point. You get a gust of wind or something come down on you, right? Or
Yeah.
you're trying to mitigate that risk and you're going to cut a tree down that's like that. Like ideally you get someone in there who's very experienced at falling trees, which is
Mm-hmm.
like cutting them down, but even still the risk is present, right? Because that tree's it's burnt out in the middle. It's very unpredictable with what it
Yeah.
can do. So I'll show you one more here that people
Mm-hmm.
might be interested in seeing. But like you see how it burns into the ground, and when you spray water on it, you're actually pushing oxygen into it, burning further back, so it starts to smoke up like this, which is really neat. Like
So by spraying water at the front of it, it's igniting from the
yeah,
back.
because it's burning all where you see that smoke, right? So you're putting water on the front end of it, but you're
Yeah.
also forcing air into it, like, and so it just like
What
isn't
the
that
heck?
crazy?
Yeah, that is crazy.
Yeah,
So how would you put out something like that?
you just got to keep like working your way up.
But then wouldn't it just continue to spread the fire?
Um, no, because eventually you're gonna put out all those little embers, right?
Oh, okay.
So we call it digging with the hose.
Mm-hmm.
So you basically just stand there, and like a hot spot that's like the size of this room. So I don't even know, like a meter by a meter, I guess you could say, could take like 10 minutes to put out, man, depending on how deep it is, because you just sit there and you circle
Mm-hmm.
like this to tear up all the ground and make sure that you're getting it all out.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, like that was one thing I was really, really surprised about is like fire acts and burns very, very differently than I initially thought it would. Like I had no idea that, like that's why in all my pictures you see me like pointing the hose at the ground. Like I thought I'd be in there spraying trees looking up,
Yeah.
but no, most of it is just you're there and you're spraying in the ground to put this fire out. So that was one thing that like that was very unexpected.
Yeah.
But yeah, but the I think the what I'm getting at here is that it, you know, burns out the trees and stuff like that. So you got to be very careful, and you got to make sure that you're putting it out in the ground. There's a lot of things to consider when it comes to that. So
Now, I know that philosophy wise,
Mm-hmm.
you really can relate with stoicism
Mm-hmm.
along those lines. And how did you incorporate your values through stoicism into your day to day life as a
Mm-hmm.
firefighter?
Yeah, I really like stoicism as a philosophical way of being, because it's kind of like that like warrior
Mm-hmm.
mentality, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
regardless of what is thrown at me that day, like I'm gonna go out there and focus on what I can control. So when we show up to a fire and it's like really taking off and there's only four of us and we've got to spend a week on this fire in 30-degree heat to like put it out, it's like, well, you know, you're out there,
Mm-hmm.
the weather is 35 degrees. I can sit here and complain about it and whine about it, or
Mm-hmm.
like I can just focus on what I can control. I can control where I point my hose. I
Mm-hmm.
can put the fire out. So I think it's just like I think stoicism has a lot to do with just your mindset and just
Mm-hmm.
focusing on what you can control and just trying to get the task done. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And just like anything you can't control, you just don't concern yourself with.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I really like
Mm-hmm.
that ethical or moral way of thinking with stoicism, because it's
Mm-hmm.
just like you just work hard, get the job done, and it's kind of just that warrior mindset, which is
Mm-hmm.
really valuable.
I know something that's incorporated with that is the suffer in silence mantra, which I
Mhm.
also know that you have brought up before.
Mhm.
Is that a shared value among the firefighters?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like suffer in silence. There's like two ways you can interpret that.
Mm,
Suffer in silence with like if you're like going through stuff and like if something's happening, on base that's like concerning you, like obviously you should talk to someone about it.
mm,
So I don't mean suffer in silence in that context. I just want to clarify that. Like if
yeah.
there's something like that's going on that is really bothering you or
Mm,
something that you need to talk about, then no, don't
mm,
suffer in silence. Like we want to have a good culture and a good community
yeah.
there that like people can feel comfortable sharing
Mm.
things that are on their mind with other people.
I think
But
it's more of a physical
yes,
thing.
exactly. If it's on your mind that your legs hurt because you've been walking,
Then
then don't come
man
to
up.
anyone
Yeah.
with that. Don't say anything.
What would
Like
happen if you did?
they tell you to take some Triactin. Try
Shit.
acting like a man.
You got me with that
Yeah.
yesterday.
Yeah, that's a good one though. It's hilarious, man. Like
Yeah.
anytime like someone wasn't suffering in silence, they'd be like, "Oh, have you tried taking a Triactin?" And it's like so funny. Like Jason, one of the guys on our crew, that was his favorite thing to say. And then we just
Yeah.
flipped it back at him, and just everyone was saying it by the end of the summer. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, like I think anyone who wants to get into wildfire, it's very very easy to get along with people there if you're a hard worker.
Mm.
Like if you're gonna go out there and give your best and not complain and suffer in silence and like you're physically ready to go for the job, then like you're gonna get along with the guys out there.
Mm.
And if you're not gonna work hard and you're not gonna and you complain a lot and stuff, then it might not be as easy for you out there.
Mhm.
So I think yeah, everyone out there has a very similar like attitude and mindset, and like you will get called a bitch for complaining or something like
Yeah.
you'll get called out on it, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, suffer in silence, absolutely.
Yeah. Uh, what would or how was building that bond between you and your coworkers? Was it built on like through pain, in the sense that you guys would be out there and it's kind of like
Hmm.
you're all suffering together?
That is a thing. Like a lot of guys will say like embrace the suck, like that collective suffering
Yeah.
really brings people together. But I don't necessarily think that was what like that wasn't the foundation of like building relationships out there with other
Mhm.
people. It was definitely like an aspect of it, right? Like
Yeah.
it's just something that you have in common, right? Because you're out there doing the same job. But
Mm.
I think I think when you just spend a lot of time with someone,
Mhm.
you just get to know them really well. Like
Mm.
it's the same thing with dispatch, right? Like you're working 12-hour shifts, like you get to know those people really well. Even more so for wildfire, because
Mhm.
you're spending work together, you're spending time off together, and you're spending days off together. So it's just you're constantly with each other. So it's just being in proximity with someone, you just get to really know them a lot. And like I got my first friends out there were like the other rookies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because like I met the guys from Ontario who I was driving up to high level.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they show up the first night. Never met these guys before in my life, and like all of a sudden we're going out for beers, right? And then we drive up to high level. That's a 7 hour car ride. We spent talking the whole time. Then we go to Hinton for members training. That's 7 days of wildfire training that you're with these guys going through the exact same stuff. You're studying for the exams together. You're spending a lot of time with those people, and boom, like a week goes by and these are already like your best friends, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really cool thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've stayed in touch. Well, I know it's only been like a week, but you've stayed in touch with all these guys.
Yeah. Well, like Eric left. He left mid-August, I want to say. I don't know. The time all kind of just blurs together. But he's been gone for quite a while. But like he's doing his paramedic school back at home. So like we've kept in touch quite a bit. Like Jason on my crew, this guy's sending me memes every day on Instagram Reels. So it's like, yeah, you keep in touch. I've kept in touch with a lot of those guys. We're all in a group chat together as well. Like some guys are still up there they're going to be up there all winter.
Damn.
Doing winter work. Yeah.
Are there people that work there year round?
I think this is the first, from what I've heard, this is the first season that they're going to keep a heli tac crew out there for the winter. And basically they're just going to go on, like, they call it fire smart. So they just go into areas and they cut like 2 meters of just branches off the trees. So when the summer comes around, there's less fuels, right? Okay. So like I was talking about those ladder fuels earlier, right? Where it starts in the ground and then it climbs up the branches into the tops of the trees. And then it burns from the top to the top to the top. So when you fire smart, you're just getting rid of those ladder fuels. So that way the fire is not getting up into the tree.
Yeah, that's smart. And this is the first year that they're trying this out?
Yeah, I believe so. Like I know there's like we have a program, like they're called fire tac crews. They're contracted by the government, so they're all like private companies. It's mostly people local to the area. A lot of indigenous people work on those crews as well. So like a lot of people come from the reserves up there who work on these crews, and they're like basically heli tac crews as well. They're 8-person crews, but they'll like do more sustained action stuff like working out there. So I think they were doing that kind of work before we came up with this program, but now we have like an Alberta wildfire crew that's going to stay up there for the winter to do this kind of work as well. It's proactive work. It's good. Like this is definitely what we need.
So theoretically this should be, or next season's fire should be less intense.
I would say you're reducing risk. You're reducing the wildfire risk in like areas of like value, right? So like you're clearing forested areas up around the town of high level, around like values and stuff like that. So theoretically, I think, and like I'm not super educated on this, so I'll like tread carefully here, but theoretically we should see less like property damage to values. I think that's kind of the idea to it. But it's the biggest forest area in the province. I want to say I could be wrong about that, but I think it is. And so like it's such a massive area, dude. Like for 4 guys to fire smart the whole district would take multiple lifetimes. You know what I mean? So it's like you do what you can around those like high risk areas, and then the fires are still gonna burn. It'll be interesting to see what next season's. I'm gonna go back for another season. I told you that, but
yeah, I think you mentioned it.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back for another season. So it'll be interesting to see what next season looks like, but it does depend on a lot of factors, like how much snow we get this winter and how much rain we get in the spring. So
if you have any if anybody's looking to join you next season, what advice or what would you say to them?
Yeah, I've talked to a few people who considered wildfire. First and foremost, I would say that it is an awesome job. Like even standing out there, like looking at what's going on, and you're just like, this is an incredible thing to witness as a human being. Like nobody gets to see this stuff, and it's just the scale of like, you hear about wildfires in the news, but to actually be standing at one, like watching it happen, is an incredible thing. And then to try your best to put that fire out it's an awesome job. So first, I would say if you're thinking about doing wildfire, even if you don't want to get into like any sort of first responder job or anything, it's an awesome experience. And so for anyone, it's an awesome job.
Do you need experience getting into firefighting?
Well, they said that they wanted a year of like emergency response experience, but a lot of the guys out there didn't have that. They like a lot of the guys did their like structure firefighting training in like school, so they obviously were given preference over others. But there were also people out there who were just going to school in the winter and then just needed a summer job, right, with no sort of related experience. So anyone can do it. Just know that it is an awesome job, but that's also very subjective, right? Like you could ask me, is it awesome to be soaking wet, covered in dirty poo smelling muskeg water? Like, yeah, I say yes. I love it, but some people might really not enjoy that. So like, do you like hiking in like a heavy ass hose bag and being exhausted? Like, I say hell yeah. Some people might not want that, right? So
that's like that type 2 fun that you're talking
yeah,
about,
exactly.
right?
If you like
It's
type
not
2
like you
fun, then
enjoy
it's the
it
job
in
for
the
you.
moment. It's
Yeah.
more like looking back on it and laughing laughing at yourself.
And like it sucks in the moment, but in the back of your head too, you're like, this is sick.
Yeah.
So it is a really cool job, and if you're down to get a little dirty and when you're in the shower at the end of the day and the water is just black running off of you because of all like the dirt and stuff, like if you're down for that, then yeah, it's a sick job. So I would say, yeah, if you're interested, it's a sick job and do it. And then I would also say, just work hard.
Yeah.
And suffer in silence. Yeah. And like if you do end up going out there, like it's a sick job. Put in the work. Be open-minded and willing to learn as much as you can. Like I thought I knew a lot coming into this based on the research that I did, and man, I didn't know shit. Like I learned so much out there. So just be willing to learn, and that just goes for anything in life, right? Always be open-minded, always be willing to learn, and always give 100% of effort in the things that you do, and you'll be just fine. So that's kind of the philosophy about getting into that job, is just be open-minded, be willing to learn. And then
on top of having an experience like that and being covered in poopy muskeg water and all that, how was the being away from family and loved one side of things and dealing with that while at the same time putting yourself through all of this other stuff?
Yeah, man. Yeah, that was definitely tough. Like, you definitely get homesick out there. But like when it's busy and you're working hard, you kind of don't really think about that. Like in the evenings when you're just like, man, like I wish I could be hanging out with my friends right now. But at the same time, like you get, like I said, you get so close with the guys out there. It's like you have an intern family that you can be with at that time. So like, I did miss home. I was fortunate because I made the drive back here to visit a lot. But like a lot of those guys from Ontario they didn't get to go home to see their family for 5 months, right? And that's tough. They got girlfriends at home, they've got their family, they've got their friends, so that really adds up. But yeah, definitely like I was planning on staying out till October 15th, but things really chilled out by the end of the season. Like we were just doing like tower maintenance and like just like the odd jobs. Like we weren't really firefighting anymore. There was no initial attack stuff. Like we had a few grass fires, but that was like things died off after the grass fires, right? Late season. So like towards the end when you're not really doing anything, you're like, man, like I'm ready to go home, ready to see my family. And so it's definitely nice to be back. But that is something that's tough, but it's also like when you're working hard, it is what it is, right? You're having fun out there and there's no place you'd rather be. So yeah, it's just you gotta cope in a way that's healthy for you. Go to the gym. And
how was the mental like we kind of touched on this with the last one. How was the mental side of things, and then how did you deal with it physically as well?
So I think like just like with everything, like mentally, like you're waking up at 8 a.m, you're tired from the day before just to go out there and do it again, right? So again, that's just kind of like pushing through it. And then also I think physical fitness is like the biggest thing to kind of get over that, right? Like because one, you feel better when you're exercising, right? And two, you're also better equipped to do the job, right? Like if your body is trained and ready to go for that, then you're not going to feel as tired at the end of the day as you would if you weren't training, right? And then also it's just exercise is just good for your mental health, period. Whatever it is that you're dealing with, exercise is going to be something beneficial. So we were fortunate enough that we had a pretty nice gym. Like we had a squat rack, a bench press, like treadmills, cables, We had a pretty sick gym there, and all the bases actually. Like even if we went to Fort Vermilion or Steen, they all had a gym as well.
Are all the firemen jacked?
Yeah, man. They're like the guy on my crew, Eric. Like that guy, he was a beast. Like he's gonna walk around, you know. Like I was definitely I was prepared enough physically, and I worked out a lot this season too. And just the job itself builds you strength too.
Was it as physically? I'm gonna butcher this word.
Strenuous.
Strenuous. Okay.
Yeah.
Was it as physically strenuous as you anticipated?
Yeah. I would say it was. I didn't anticipate that I'd be chilling as much as I was, but like when it was time to work, like hiking in that gear, like you need good cardio. You need to be strong. And like I know those unit crew guys were working like hard every day. Like those guys work hard. They also make a lot. They make a lot of money because they're out there doing like 12, 16-hour shifts some days, and it's just but like I think the biggest thing was hiking into the fires, right? Because when a wildfire starts and you're flying in by helicopter, sometimes you can't always land like right close to the fire. You have to land where you can, where it's safe, right? Where the main rotor's clear, where the tail rotor's not going to chop stuff up on the ground. So sometimes you're hiking in a lot of gear, and you have to go quick because the fire's starting to go. So that was like the biggest thing probably, was hiking in gear. Yeah, and I was thankful that I had done the cardio and done the strength training, and I was ready for that. Yeah.
How many pounds of gear were you wearing when you were hiking in these fires?
Probably the hose bag was like 70 pounds. The pump is probably like 10 pounds. Like it's just like a lot of stuff because you're bringing hand tools, you're bringing like your pump, you have your intake hose for the pump. Like there's just like a ton of gear. I'll find a picture and like I have like a selfie of us hiking in as a crew somewhere in my camera roll. I didn't have it like ready to go, but like just you can see all the gear that we hike in as a crew, and it's a lot of gear. So it's nice that you can spread it out. But
just I'll put all the photos on the screen so that everybody who's watching can see them all. But as we come to a close here, what is one last thing that you want to add to maybe either those people on the fence, just life advice, something you learned, anything along those lines? Just a little closer here for yourself.
Yeah, you bet. I talked about it a little bit on the last podcast as well, but it's kind of one of the things that I'm starting to really appreciate, and I think everyone should do, is just like do lots of different stuff. Like if you're really, and especially with the theme of this podcast, right? Like enlighten the youth, you know. If you're not sure what you want to do or where you want to be at, or if you're not sure, even if you're interested, if you're on the fence about doing wildfire or not, like at the end of the day, who cares, man? Just do lots of different stuff. Like if you don't want to go into a career of emergency response, or if you don't ever want to come back to wildfire again after you do one season, it's like it's an experience that you have, and having lots of experiences is something that will make you feel fulfilled, or at least it does for me, right? Like I've done a lot of different jobs, I've done a lot of different like extracurricular activities, and like I've just kind of built a platform of different experiences, and I'm very thankful. And I've learned something from the work I was doing. I've learned stuff from the people that I've met and interacted with. So yeah, like if you know what you want to do in life, if you don't know what you want to do in life, regardless, like just do lots of different stuff, because you will learn so much. And keep an open mind while you're doing it, because you'll meet so many different people, even people you know you might not get along with. Like even still, there's things that you can learn from them. So yeah, that's pretty much what I gotta say. Do lots of different stuff. It'll be worth it.
2 years ago or 3 years ago, could you have seen yourself at where you're at now?
No, man. Like I came from Saskatchewan after shuttle driving, and like I even was thinking about that. Like the other day, we were just doing some brush saw work at a fire lookout tower, and I'm like, man, if you asked me even like 2 years ago if I would ever be at a fire lookout tower, like that's so random, bro. A fire lookout tower in the middle, like who the fuck even goes there? And it's like I would have had no idea, man. But the experiences I've had and things that I've done have all led up to this point. And there's lots more to come. I'm going to Asia at the end of this month. So that's another experience. Like you got to travel, you got to do lots of stuff. So this will be my first like solo trip. I'm going for 3 months, so by myself. So yeah, I'm taking a chance. I'm nervous, but I'm just gonna take it head on, man, and see where life takes me. And fortune favors the bold. Life, the life and the universe rewards people who step outside of their comfort zone. I truly believe that. So, life is good, man, and I'm excited to see where it takes me next.
Yeah. Well, we'll definitely be having Nolan back on, probably one more time before he leaves, and then one time when he gets back, which will probably be about 4 months from now. So
Yeah.
this guy came back for a few weeks to ditch us again, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But
we'll make the most of it while I'm here, though.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll keep up to date with Nolan's journey. We'll hear all of his crazy stories. This guy's gonna have endless stories for us when he's back, I'm sure.
I hope so.
Yeah. So that's been the end of episode 10 of Enlighten the Youth. Thank you once again, Nolan, for coming through.
Been a pleasure.
Really appreciate it. And we'll catch you guys on the next episode. Peace out, guys.
See you guys.